Good day, everyone. I am Sergeant Leo C. Lopez Jr., Reserve Philippine Army. I am 21 years old. I graduated Bachelor of Secondary Education, major in Filipino at Pangasinan State University, Ordinada Campus. I also passed licensure examination for teachers September 29, 2019. Bago tayo magsimula sa ating tatalakayin ay alamin muna natin ang mga rules o alituntunin na dapat nating sundin. Una, kapag kayo ay naiihi o nais pumunta sa palikuran, nais ko na dumiretso na lamang kayo upang hindi makaabala o makaistorbo sa ating tinatalakay. Pangalawa, kapag nagkaroon ng lindol, you must drop, cover, and hold on. Nais ko ng bawat isa ay magtago sa ilalim ng lamesa upang hindi matamaan ng kahit na anumang matigas na bagay ang anumang parte ng ating katawan. Pangatlo, kapag nagkaroon ng sunog, you must get out and stay out. Go to your safe meeting place. Kapag nagkaroon ng sunog ay nais ko na pumunta sa labas ang bawat isa at pumunta sa ligtas na lugar upang hindi masunog o mapaso ang anumang parte ng katawan. Panghuli, kapag kayo ay inaantok, nais ko na pumunta kayo sa likod upang mag-exercise o mag-stretching upang kayo ay magising. Ang ating tatalakayin ay tungkol sa rope techniques. Objective: at the end of the lesson, the students will be able to know what is knot tying, the basic components of knot, and rappelling. Scope: knot tying and practical usage. We have the common types of knot: square knot, 8 knot, half knot, and bowline. And then the next one is rappelling. We have sit hip, rundown, lizard, and slide for life. Bago tayo dumako sa knot tying and practical usage, ay alamin muna natin kung ano ang ibig sabihin ng knot. Knot is an intentional complication in cordage which may be practical or decorative or both. Practical knots are classified by function, including hitches, bends, loop knots, and splices. Hitch knot fastens a rope to another object. Ang isang halimbawa ng ginagamitan ng hitch knot ay mga bridge. Bend knot fastens two ends of a rope. Ang bend knot ay ginagamit kapag ang tali ay kulang sa haba. Pinagdudugtong nito ang dalawang dulo ng tali. Loop knot is any knot creating a loop. Ginagamit ang loop knot sa pag-attach ng clips at mga hooks. Halimbawa nito ay ang bowline knot. Splices knot denotes any multi-strand knot. Ang splices knot ay ginagamit sa paggawa ng stopper sa dulo ng tali. Ginagamit din ito sa paggawa ng loop or an eye in a rope. At ginagamit din ito sa pagdugtong ng dalawang tali sa magkabilang dulo nito. Now let's have the knot theory. Knot theory is a branch of topology. It deals with the mathematical analysis of knots, their structure and properties, and with the relationships between different knots. In topology, a knot is a figure consisting of a single loop with any number of crossing or knotted elements. A closed curve in a space which may be moved around so long as its strands never pass through each other. As a closed loop, a mathematical knot has no proper ends and cannot be undone or untied. However, any physical knot in a piece of string can be thought of as a mathematical knot by fusing the two ends. Knot is also used by hagfish. The hagfish is known to strip slime from its skin by tying itself into a simple overhand knot. Ginagalaw niya ang kanyang katawan upang ang simple overhand knot na kanyang ginawa ay mapunta sa kanyang buntot. Ginagawa rin niya ang action na ito pa-reverse, ibig sabihin from tail to head, to pry out flesh after beating into a carcass. Knot tying in practical usage. Common types of knot: square knot, 8-knot, half knot, bowline. Square knot, it is also known as reef knot. It is used in securing bandages, securing packages, joining different ropes together, and holding heavy objects. Square knot can be tied tight, but it is easily to remove. How to tie square knot?
The square knot is often the first knot scouts learn to tie. The square knot is a binding knot. It's used to hold an object or objects together or in place. The square knot can be tied by passing the right end over and around the left, and then the left end over and around the right. This method is commonly referred to as right over left, and left over right. The knot can also be tied by passing the end on the right side over and under the end on the left, and then again passing the end on the right side under and over the end on the left. And this method is commonly referred to as over-under, and under-over. Because it's simple and effective as a binding knot, the square knot is used to bind a wound or tie off a bandage. And because it can be tied down onto an object, the square knot is frequently used to fasten a line around packages. A correctly tied bow is a square knot with two slippery ends. It's used to hold the footwear in place by binding the laces against the shoe. In the same way, square knots with one or two slippery ends are used to bind the flaps of the wall tents at camp. It's good to note that both ends of the square knot are on the same side. A square knot can be most easily released by grabbing the sides and pulling them outwards. If one of the ends of the square knot is pulled in the opposite direction, the square knot will collapse, and what's referred to as a lark's head will be tied around the end that was pulled. When a square knot has been incorrectly tied, The result is known as a granny knot. The difference between the two is easy to see. Additional information about the square knot with a foolproof way to always tie it right can be found in the how-to video series Pioneering Skills under Pioneering Knots, Square Knot Visual Approach.
Eight knot. It is a rock climbing knot. It is good in rappelling because it is easy in visual inspection. How to tie 8 knot.
To tie the figure 8 knot, grab the end of the rope in one hand, then extend your arm and measure out a length from your fist to your opposite shoulder. Hold up that bight and twist it one full rotation so that the standing part of the rope crosses over the working side, then comes around again to its original position. Now pass the end of the rope back through the loop. Next, pass the end of the rope through both the tie-in points on your harness and pull the knot in close to you. Now feed the rope back through the knot, tracing the original as you go. You want the working end to run completely parallel to the standing part of the original knot. Once you've worked the end all the way through, dress the knot by making sure the strands are neat and parallel, then tighten the knot by pulling each strand tight individually. Make sure you have at least 6 inches of tail, and you can check the knot by counting 5 sets of parallel lines. You'll use the figure 8 all the time, because it's the most common way to tie the rope into your harness.
There are other types of 8 knot that is useful. The next video is all about the another 4 types of 8 knot that we must know.
In this video, we're going to go over the common figure 8 variations, which is one of the knots that I went over in my first video. The first knot that we're going to go over is the double figure 8 loop. The double figure 8 loop is a common knot when you need to have 2 loads going in 2 different directions, and it's going to be most common in climbing applications. For a refresher on how to do the figure 8 loop, go ahead and check out my first video, but we're just going to jump right into it. We'll take a lengthy bight and we'll start it out as if we're making a regular figure 8 loop. We'll take a bight out of the bight and pass it through the eye. Now this is where things will differ a little bit. Instead of pulling out, what you'll do is you'll do a reach around instead. So you'll grab the bight, pass it over the whole apparatus, and then tighten it down. Dress the knot as needed, and there you have it, a double figure 8 loop. The second knot that we're going to go over is the figure 8 noose. The figure 8 noose is a little bit more secure than a standard noose or a slip knot, so for a little bit more robust of an application, this is a good thing to do. To create a figure 8 noose, you're going to need to form a loop out of a bight, and you'll take the working end and pass it through the back behind the standing end. Then you'll bring it over on top, wrap around the back, and then you'll take the working end and go over the standing end and into that loop. And as you can see, it sort of forms a very nice figure 8. Tighten everything down, and there you have it, a figure 8 noose. And this is what it should look like when you're all complete. The third knot that we're going to do is the Flemish bend. This is similar in application to a water knot, but its application is more suited for round cordage. We'll start with 2 cords, and we'll go ahead and make a standard figure 8 knot. And we'll keep it nice and loose until we're ready to tighten it down. Next, we'll take the other line and we'll pass it through the exit of the working end. And it's a good idea to pull more line through than you think you'll need. The only thing you really have to do now is follow the exact path of the original line, and everything will be parallel and will look nice and neat at the end. You should have all parallel lines, no crisscrossing, and it should all be neat. And to make this a little bit more secure, you can do a double overhand knot around the standing end of the other line with the working end, and there you have it, nice and secure. And the fourth knot, last but not least, is the one-way sheet bend. The one-way sheet bend is very similar to a standard sheet bend, only this way it's less apt to get caught on things when you're dragging it in a single direction. We'll start with 2 lines, and we'll start by making a standard sheet bend. If you're unfamiliar or need a refresher on what a sheet bend is, go ahead and check out my first video where I go over all that stuff. So here's where the figure 8 part goes through. Take the working end of your pulling line, and you'll take it and just pass it underneath itself to form a figure 8. This way the line's not going to get caught when you're pulling it in the direction of the red line, and it's nice and tidy that way. It's less apt to get caught and undone this way. And again, this is what it should look like when it's all done.
Half knot. It is a basic binding knot. It is used to take amount of load. How to tie half knot.
Welcome to another knot tying demonstration from animatedknots.com. This video shows how to tie the half knot, the basic binding knot. Pass one end over and then around the other. When pulled tight over a curved surface, the knot may be able to take a modest load in the 2 ends. A second half knot is required to turn this knot into the completed square or reef knot. Neither the half knot nor the complete knot should ever be used for critical loads. For more information about this knot and many others, and to learn about our mobile apps, please visit animatedknots.com.
Bowline. It is used in rappelling. It is also used in holding heavy objects. How to tie bowline.
The bowline, also pronounced bowline and bowline, is often referred to as the king of knots. The bowline forms a fixed loop at the end of a line. Use it when you need a loop that doesn't slip. That's why it makes an excellent rescue knot. Though the bowline can be tied in a variety of ways, this video features a tried and true method that enables scouts to learn and remember how to tie it most easily. In this method, the most important thing is to start with an overhand loop. Right-handed scouts should make a right overhand loop. Make a small right overhand loop in the line. Bring the end of the line up through the small loop. Duck the running end behind the standing part of the line. Feed the running end back down through the small loop alongside itself. Hold on to the running end and pull up on the standing part of the line. For many years, teaching the bowline is simplified by imagining the end of the rope as a rabbit. The overhand loop is the rabbit's hole, and the standing part is a tree. The rabbit comes up the hole, goes around the tree from right to left, then back down the hole again. For left-handed scouts, it's often easier to start with a left overhand loop. The rabbit comes up the hole, goes around the tree, this time from left to right, and then once again goes back down the hole. The same procedure is followed when tying a bowline around the waist. On this occasion, the scout passes the rope around himself before forming the overhand loop. Overhand loop, up the hole, around the tree, back down the hole. The bowline can be used in fine fashion when attaching a guy line to the grommet of a tent or tarp. When you want to add some strain at the end of a rope, reeving a second line through the bowline's loop provides an excellent mechanical advantage. And a bowline is just the thing to pass over an extension of an upright pole to hold it up and add stability. Of course, the sign of a great knot is that it's easy to tie and easy to untie. Even after withstanding lots of strain, the bowline is still very simple to undo. A useful knot? Oh yes. Many people use the bowline frequently, for work and play, on the job, and in the field.
Hey everybody, this is Craig Cottle, the Director of Nature Reliance School. My good friend David from Ultimate Survival Tips, you need to check out his channel if you haven't, which got like 400 million subscribers. He and I did a collaboration video where I showed how to tie a bowline knot. However, we didn't have time to go through some uses for it, so in this video, that's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna show you some uses for the bowline. So you need to go to that video and watch all the details on how to actually tie the bowline, because I show 3, but I'm gonna review real quick, okay? The first and foremost is to do the classic rabbit comes out of his hole, goes around the tree, goes down through the hole, and you have your bowline. That's the classic way of doing it. And again, I'm going through these quickly. Watch the other video to get the details. The other one is a little variant where you take the working end of the rope, lay it on the rope, flip it, so that there's coming up through the hole, take it around, back down through the hole. That again is the second way of tying the bowline. And the third and final one is what I call Mick Jagger's tongue. So I want to make a figure 8 with my rope. Once I make my figure 8 and I have it, I want to dress it up. Here's Mick Jagger's tongue. I pierce his tongue, grab his upper lips, pull that all around, and then I have basically a double bowline, which is a bowline on a bite. So in that regard, again, those are real quick reviews on what I did in the video with David, so check that out. Now let's get to how we can use them. Now, one of the uses, and what I see is the most useful use for it that I have come across, is to set up a hammock. You can put the bowline on the end of your hammock tie downs that are actually part of the hammock, and it doesn't matter how much pressure you put on or how many times you use it, you're going to be able to untie this very easily. So what I do is I use a carabiner with the bowline in the hammock, and then I can utilize it right into the hammock straps. And again, it doesn't matter how much pressure I put on this, I'll be able to untie that whenever I want to. Another real good use for the bowline in a rescue situation is, let's assume that you've fallen over a bank, down in a hole, over a cliff line, and somebody throws you a rope down and you're hanging on for dear life with something and you want to tie a bowline with one hand. In essence, what you can do is this. Take about 6 to 8 inches off the working end, take it over top and bring that back to you. In essence, what you want to have is that rabbit hole that we talked about earlier. Then take it around the tree and back down through the hole. Now this is a bit awkward right here, one-handed, but in essence, when tension is pulled on it, what we have is a bowline. What I'm going to do next is show you that up close so you can see what I did here with one hand. So here's our 6 to 8 inches. We lay it onto our rope, bring it back to ourselves around the tree, grab it and pull it through. If you have 2 hands, you can do that, but what we're trying to do is simulate one hand there, and there is our bowline. It won't slip on me. They can pull, and it won't tight and constrict on me such that it chokes me or anything of that nature. Now, the other use that you'll hear most often is utilizing the bowline as a rescue knot. And the reason it's such a good knot for that is because once you put pressure on it, again, it pulls tight, but it's not a constrictor, meaning once pressure is relieved, whatever you're pulling that pressure on is not going to be harmed. So in essence, the bowline with the rope through it can be tossed down into something, to somebody. They can wrap it around their body. Once they wrap it around their body, I can then save them, and once I release, it's not going to choke and or hurt them. Right now, I want to be frank with you on this next one, which is what most people suggest that you use for climbing and rappelling and what have you. In the circles that I run, it's got a lot out of vogue. In essence, you want to have a bowline and that you tie a safety knot in. That way you kind of doubled up for safety, which is important, and this is what you clip into when you put your harness on. But I'm a certified high course facilitator, and it's gotten to the point where a lot of people don't utilize this at all. I just want to point that out, because there was a famous climber who this came untied and then this came through the bowline and he died after falling off of a rock. So a lot of people have gotten into the habit of utilizing a figure 8, even though it's harder to untie once pressure is put on it. It's not impossible to untie. So just keep that in mind if we're using the bowline to tie in with. Hey, now another good use is, let's say you got your ATV or a truck or a vehicle or tractor, whatever it might be, and you want to pull some timber out of the woods or something of that nature. This would not be real useful to try to pull a vehicle out because the rope's not going to be strong enough. But if you take your bowline and just put it over your hitch, it's real easy for this to fall off. Although you can put as much pressure on this and you can still untie this. I mean, I could actually pull another ATV out without any trouble as far as getting the knot untied. But because I want to make sure it doesn't slip off, I just make a constrictor loop with my bowline, and I can then put that around. I can pull tight and I can still get this untied real easy like without much trouble. No matter how much pressure I put on, it's still going to come off rather easily. Hey, and if you notice, every time I talk about one of these knots, what I'm trying to do is tie it rather quickly so you can see that it's really easy to do. So there it is again. But this next use is not something I ever want to have to do again, but it's going to come up. But when a cow gives birth to a calf, a lot of times they have trouble, particularly heifers having a calf for the first time. What you can do is create a bowline noose. And in essence, what you do is when you pull on the animal, it's going to keep a certain amount of pressure, but as soon as I release, that pressure is released. So in essence, if that heifer is having difficulty giving birth to the calf, you can stick this up into the cow. I know that sounds kind of gross, but hey, this is what it was used for. Put this around the calf's neck. If the front legs are available, stick it around the front legs. Once I pull constriction on it and start to help the mother by pulling the calf out, as soon as I release, there's no pressure on the calf anymore. And so if you're pulling and tugging for an extended period of time, obviously you're going to asphyxiate the calf inside the womb, and you don't want that to happen. So a bowline works exceptionally well for that. So in general use, as far as a farm knot, it's a fantastic knot. Again, you can utilize this to rope a horse, a cow, a calf, a dog, a sheep, whatever. And again, when the animal pulls, it pulls tension, but as soon as you release that tension, there's no more tightness on the animal itself. So it's a great knot for that. Quite frankly, this is called the king of knots, and if you do research on it, which I tried to do before this to see what other people are using it for, they'll say, man, there's hundreds of uses, and I think there is for climbing and rappelling and stuff of that nature. But as far as general woods and camping and survival, I just don't see this as being the king of knots in that area, although it does have its very specific uses. So with that said, this has been the bowline. You can utilize it for whatever you want to use, a noose or a knot such that it gets constriction when you pull, but releases when you're not having pressure on it, because it is very good for that. As with all things with Nature Reliance School, come on, join in, let's learn together.
Rappelling. This technique is used by climbers, mountaineers, cavers, canyoners, search and rescue, and rope access technicians to descend cliffs or slopes when they are too steep or dangerous to descend without protection. Many climbers use this technique to protect established anchors from damage. Rope access technicians also use this as a method to access difficult to reach areas from above for various industrial applications like maintenance, construction, inspection, and welding. Noong una, ang mga taong nagsasagawa ng rappelling o mga mountaineers ay hindi gumagamit ng harness or any safety equipments. Nang maimbento ang carabiner, ginamit nila ito at tinawag ang paggamit na ito bilang double carabiner brake abseil technique. Ito ay ginagamitan ng carabiner at sling bilang isang harness. This is a figure 8 belay device. It is a piece of metal, usually an aluminum alloy, in the shape of an 8 with one large end and one small end. The figure 8 belay device was one of the earliest specialized abseil device, which often required gloves. Ito ay kadalasang ginagamit ng mga sundalo dahil sa paggamit nila nito ay nadadagdagan ng bilis sa kanilang pagbaba. Sit hip rappel. It is a rappelling where you lower yourself down a vertical surface with your back towards the ground and your feet up against the wall. Why sit hip rappel is good? Sit hip rappel is good because it is easy to learn, simple to execute, and useful in a variety of situations. Ang sit hip rappel ay maganda dahil ito ay madaling matutunan at maaari itong gamitin sa bundok o sa pagbaba sa building kung sakaling magkaroon ng sunog. This type of rappel is incredibly popular for simple situations where you just need to get down. Another thing why it is good for beginners, you're able to easily control your speed without having to worry about some of the more advanced techniques. Limitations. Can't do it with any kind of load. Hindi pwedeng mag-sit-hip rappel kung may daladalang mabibigat na bagay. Need a steady surface to brace against. Kailangan kapag nag-sit-hip rappel ka ay dapat hindi bako-bako ang iyong tatapakan dahil kapag bako-bako ito ay maaari kang madulas at madisgrasya. Slower than other techniques. Ang sit-hip rappel ay mas mabagal kaysa sa ibang klase ng rappelling. Kailangan ito ay mabagal dahil kapag binilisan mo ay maaari kang madulas at madisgrasya. Main danger in sit-hip rappel. Climbers become overconfident in their abilities and forget to follow all of the safety steps from a standard rappel or sit-hip rappel. Halimbawa nito ay ang pagkalimot sa paglagay ng stopper nut. Run-down rappel. Rappel in which you descend face first towards the ground with your back to the anchor point. Why run-down rappel is good? Run-down rappel is good because it is faster than sit-hip rappel. Mas mabilis ang pagbaba mo kapag nag-run-down rappel ka dahil habang bumababa ka ay may kasabay itong paglakad o pagpadyak ng iyong paa. Limitations. More dangerous than sit-hip rappel. Ang run-down rappel ay mas delikado kaysa sa sit-hip rappel dahil sa run-down rappel, ikaw ay mabilis na bumababa at kapag ito ay hindi mo na control ay maaari kang madisgrasya. No specialized equipment. Sa run-down rappel, walang ginagamit na specialized equipment na maaaring sumalo sa iyo sa iyong paglapag sa baba kung sakaling ito ay hindi mo makontrol. Lizard rappel. Originally designed to help, while getting lower to the ground, you are still firing. Ito ay ang kadalasang ginagamit ng mga sundalo dahil habang bumababa sila ay maaari silang magpaputok ng baril. Why lizard rappel is good? Speed. Ikaw ay mabilis na nakakababa. They put you in a good position to return enemy fire. Habang ikaw ay mabilis na nakakababa, ikaw naman ay maaaring makipagpalitan ng putok ng baril sa iyong kalaban. Limitation. Dangerous, fast, and extremely exhilarating. Ito ay napakadelikado dahil ikaw ay mabilis na bumababa. Maaaring hindi mo makontrol ang iyong paglapag dahil sa iyong bilis. It allows you to dangle in an open space while lowering yourself to the ground as quickly as possible. Slide for life. It is used in crossing rivers or crossing from one place to another. Ginagamit ito sa pagtawid sa mga rivers or kapag nagkaroon ng sunog ay nais mong pumunta sa kabilang building. Why Slide for Life is good? Slide for Life is good because it is useful in variety of situations. Ito ay maaari mong gamitin sa pagtawid sa mga ilog o pagtawid sa isang building kung sakaling nagkaroon man ng sunog. Limitation. You need a partner to perform it. Hindi mo maaaring i-perform ang Slide for Life kapag wala kang partner na siyang aalalay sa iyo sa kabila. Now let's have the summary. We tackled what is all about the knot tying and practical usage, common types of knot, square knot, 8 knot, half knot, and bowline, and then the rappelling. We have the sit hip, rundown, lizard, and slide for life. Questions? If you have any questions, feel free to message me at my Facebook account or my Gmail account, and I will answer your questions. Para sa inyong assignment o takdang aralin, nais ko na sagutan ninyo ang ilang mga katanungan sa inyong kwaderno. What are the similarities and differences of the common types of knot we tackled? What are the similarities and differences of the different types of rappel we tackled? At dyan nagtatapos ang ating talakayan. Thank you and good day.